And the man Moses was very great in the land of Egypt, in the sight of Pharaoh's servants and in the sight of the people. And Moses said,
So we have a Pharaoh who did not know Joseph, but loved Joseph. And now what do we have? Another Jew who the Egyptians adore. It's just ironic.
Right.
Joseph and now Moses.
That language is used of Joseph as well, isn't it? Yeah.
Let's see. With regard to the people, no, I don't think so. But they knew he saved their lives. So,
but in this case, I don't know if they adored him. At least it says that he was great.
You mean Joseph?
No, Moses. They say he was great in their sight.
Fine. Okay, that's fair enough.
They might have been scared of him more than anything else.
Both of them were great in their sight.
They were great
whether
in
they adored them or not. Yeah.
Question.
For sure, Joseph they loved. That's for sure.
Where are you emotionally? I'm just curious about this. When you're reading this, are you reading this in eager anticipation of the Pharaoh being punished? Are you reading this in trepidation? And because I remember when
it's more trepidation. It's like, I think because I probably identify with the Pharaoh.
You do?
Well, enough.
You mean about losing a child?
Yeah, about
just
what's
about
coming.
the consequences of your own stupidity. It's like
are you feeling
vindicated?
Like vengeful that you're hoping that the Pharaoh's going to get his? Are you feeling remorse and empathy for what's coming? What is your emotional? Because I remember I used to read in like high school history when you'd read like World War I and World War II. It's like you have that sense of being ensconced. Like I really hope that America wins, right? Like you have this emotional positioning in relation to reading history, even if you know the outcome. And I'm just curious.
But in this, like there's this growing, looming threat. It's as if God is saying, "This is don't if you don't listen, this is where we're going." He's not telling you where we're going yet. It's almost like it's like in a movie, right? You can feel the music like coming up, and you can feel the threat, and you know, like, please let it stop before it reaches that point. You don't even know where it's going, and then once it gets there, I don't think. Is it possible to not feel sad for the Egyptians and to not feel sympathy and to not wish that the Pharaoh had broken before? And it's like you get there and you're like, oh.
Dennis, how about you?
I hope Pharaoh gets his.
Yeah.
I admit.
I knew I could count on you in that regard. What about the Egyptians? I was like, that's why I was just waiting.
Is that a good sign or a bad sign?
Well,
we know Dennis likes revenge.
He's clearly the villain. And
yes, exactly. I want villains to get punished. I don't know.
But do you want the villains to learn before they have to pay the ultimate price?
That's such a Christian question.
I know. That's why I wanted to get Prager's take on this.
I don't give a damn if they learn before they die. I want them to die. Because I'm more concerned with good people. I don't want good people to suffer. So whether Pharaoh learns or not is between Pharaoh and Pharaoh. But between Pharaoh and me, he has to be punished. But the great lesson, which is, of course, unlearned, like most great lessons, is people do really like tyrants. There's no way around it. One of you mentioned this, and I didn't bother commenting on it. But polls in Russia prior to Ukraine showed the increasing proportions of the Russian people adored Stalin.
Yeah. Well, that's the same thing that happens to the Israelites. They complain to Moses about...
Because they want a monarch?
No, they want to go back to Egypt.
Oh, well, want to go back? Okay, there you go.
Do they adore Stalin or they adored order and the greatness of Russia? I know Russians now.
Also, one might
who
admire
the order under. There's always order under a tyrant.
That's what I mean.
Yes, okay.
You love order rather than disorder.
Freedom is messy.
In this text,
people don't like messy,
but they still are happy when the tyrant.
There's also some question about the veracity of polling under Stalin.
No, there's polling now. Not poll. Of course, polling under Stalin means nothing. Polling today, I mean,
there's
in the last few years.
There's definitely, call that nostalgia for... But some of that's ignorance, too. You know, they look back and they just see the greatness, so to speak.
Right, but it's willful ignorance.
Yeah, I know.
But don't you think in this text, it is clear, it seems like in this text, it's clear that it's trying to show us that the people of Egypt now the Israelites find favor in their sight. They're giving them jewels and things for them to leave, and they see Moses as being very powerful in their sight. And then in the text itself, it switches right. way to saying, now all the firstborn will die. And it says of the Pharaoh, and then it says to the woman behind the mill. And so it's like right in the text, a few verses from each other, you see the people have compassion for the Israelites, and then it says, no, but their children are going to die too.
Yeah.
That's why I feel like there is
very
a sense
sad.
in which we're meant
That's
to
right.
have compassion,
That's correct.
even for the Egyptians in the
But
narrative.
Dennis, take Weimar, and how many Germans were grateful for the order that Hitler seemed to bring, and then they suddenly realized. You know,
Well,
they loved order
I'm
rather
not
than the Weimar
I
chaos.
tend not to defend the Germans, but it is fair to say that Hitler didn't get a majority of the vote. The Nazis didn't get a majority vote. But between the communists and the Nazis, they did get a majority. The tyranny parties did win out.
No, but I'm with you on the comeuppance. My goodness.
Yeah, thank you. I know I had a feeling.
I pray
Yes.
daily that Putin will get his comeuppance. I really do pray.
Your
Yeah.
point of willful blindness, I mean, that holds both ways. Like, you have polling now about communism, right? You have polling. I think this has to do with like a generational remove from the horrors of both Stalin and what happened in communism, right? So
Right.
it is both directions.
You mean both willful and just normal? Is that what you're
No,
saying?
I mean that it's not just that people look back fondly on tyrants. People look back fondly on communism now. They were removed from a certain distance of it. So the willful blindness and the ignorance isn't.
Listen, the number of Americans and English who gave Stalin the bomb, the flirtation with tyranny on the part of Western intellectuals is among the most depressing facts of the 20th century.
The Eastern
No,
Europeans
not
who
quite yet.
experienced communism, they don't look back.
That's right. But I mean, like when we're polling today,
Oh, you
right?
mean
If you
Western?
poll, in the West, if you poll
Well,
now on
but
communism,
they're
people have an
ignorant.
idea, right? And likewise with tyranny. Like if Stalin's doing well, in
What
the polls,
percentage of Harvard seniors do you think could identify Pol Pot?
Like-
I would say 5%.
Yeah, I think you're probably being optimistic on that front.
Okay.
I mean, when I taught about the Gulag catastrophes or the catastrophes of the
Oh,
Soviet Union,
Gulag too. Just say
hardly
Gulag.
any of my students
That's
have ever
right.
heard of any of that.
That's
Hardly
right.
any of them today have heard of Solzhenitsyn.
Oh, sir. Oh, that's a given. But Pol Pot, one of the great mass murderers, he killed a quarter of his own people. By the way, these tyrants killed. Hitler is the only of the tyrants that didn't mostly slaughter his own people. Pol Pot killed Cambodians. Mao killed Chinese. Stalin killed Russians. And they're still held in esteem.
how about Mussolini?
Well, he wasn't a mass murderer. He's not in their category. He was a tyrant, but he's not in their category. Italians don't make that type.
The Italians make lousy tyrants.
Yeah.